All right, hey guys, welcome back to the Inner Circle Studio. We are joined by Holly Joy McCabe today. Holly is the founder of Brain Body Speak. Brain Body Speak covers the art of science, healing, and transformation. Welcome to the studio, Holly.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Good. I know you've been traveling a lot. Glad you're finally back home.
I know it feels good.
And
Traveling is
now
amazing, but at the same time, it's just like feels good to be home.
it is. It takes a lot out of you, all the flights,
Yeah.
all that jet lag. So now where do you call home? Where are you calling home for the audience?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina. How's the weather out there today?
It's good. It's the classic bipolar fall, as we call it, where it's like 7 different seasons in one singular day. It's always fun times here.
Yeah, that sounds like Michigan.
Yeah, exactly. We're in that right now.
I love it. Well, you look fabulous today. You are looking very well.
Thank you. Thank
When
you.
last we met, we were at the BK Mastermind. That was
Yeah.
a fantastic event. To give the audience a little context, Holly and I are part of the Legacy Tribe family, and we've been at several meetups. And most recently, we were invited to Bedros Keuilian's Mastermind, which was a fantastic event out in Chino Hills, California.
Yeah.
Yes. You know what's funny is that when we were at BK Live in Arizona, out in Scottsdale, it totally escaped me that we were on stage together. And I did not put that together until we got to the mastermind. And we were chatting in the hotel because we stayed at the same hotel. And I was like, wait a minute. That was you. It was myself, you, and Alex.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was
That's pretty
fun.
funny.
It was fun, and it's funny because like I had this whole thing this year where like visibility was my number one word, and I was like, I just will be on every stage in front of every audience, like I'll say yes to everything. And I had been like sick leading up to that, and when I got the invite to do that, I was like like my instant fear, and I'll sound like crap, and that's a big stage or whatever. And it was very insignificant. It was just a 2-second testimonial, but it's just funny how like my nerves and stuff flared up, but then I was like, no, like that's the exact stage you do want to be on, even if it is just for 2 seconds. And it felt fun to be up there. Like, I don't know. I just love the stage once I'm up there.
Yeah, it was good. You were great. Alex was phenomenal. I was blinded by the lights. So we all walked up. It was Alex first, you second, and then me third. But I was the first to do my my testimonial or whatever, and it was it threw me off because the lights were so friggin' bright. Did you notice that too, or was it just me?
Yeah,
Okay,
it is. I had like a background in like theater and music and stuff, and so I'd been very rusty, but I feel like that's almost like there's like this alter ego that takes over when you're kind of used to that, where you go in this like flow zone. And I feel like that kind of got activated for me. But that's just because I think of like my background in that, like the stage is really where I would generally feel the most confident in an odd way. Like I would rather be up in front of 10,000 people than like one person.
Oh, I get it. I've heard that before from people. Yeah. It was just, I couldn't see anybody. So it just threw me for
like,
a loop
what
for
is
a
happening?
second. Yeah.
The lights were really bright because you expect that you can actually see people. You expect that it's like a two-way visual, like being in the audience. And then you're like, this is not the same.
I was kind of relieved that I couldn't see anybody, but then I was kind of thrown off because I couldn't see anybody.
Yeah,
so it was like,
who am I speaking to? What is happening here?
But it was
the
good.
short end of the stick because you had to go first. And I feel like that's always the hardest, because then when the other people start talking, the icebreaker's done and you're like, oh, well, I should have, or I could have. And
it was good though. It was good, but following BK is tough because he said, everything's so eloquently and amazing because he's great at what he does.
Yeah.
And then just handed off the mic to me, and it was like, oh shit, now I got to follow up from like the man, right?
Yeah.
So that was funny. But yeah, hey, so talk a little bit about Brain Body Speak. Now, Brain Body Speak is your company. It's your whole entity, but that breaks out into like 4 branches, isn't that right? Okay.
Yeah. So Brain Body Speak is kind of like my core essential personal brand. I, for many years, did a lot of one-to-one coaching, therapy, and stuff. And I've kind of stepped away from that to exclusively focus on the leg of my brand called Regulated CEO. That is where I really support high-level, like hard-charging CEOs, entrepreneurs, execs, type A individuals that need a lot of support for their brain and nervous system. But before that, the majority of my work was really in severe trauma healing, like trauma healing relevant to the impacts on the brain, the body, the nervous system. And I combine a lot of different fields. And then I also have 2 other product lines, a supplement product line that's really designed to support the brain and the nervous system as well, and chronic stress and hormonal dysfunction and stuff. And then this random side thing that was like an accident, but happens to be one of the most successful things I've done, was this beauty line with a natural deodorant product that I went all mad scientist during the pandemic and created for myself. Like, never thought it was going to be a product. And then it kind of just like took off, and I decided to add it to our product line. And that's like its own little thing that, again, just has its own momentum. So primarily I focus on supporting people like with a therapeutic context, but then I have all these other little legs that try to do that too. So yeah, that's kind of
I
my
love
world.
that. Well, that's a happy accident too that happened.
Yeah, exactly. I always joke because like our reviews on that product are so extreme. People are like, this changed my life. Like, they're actually comical. And I'm like, I thought I was going to change the world with like neurosomatic trauma healing and brain stuff, like all this deep, profound stuff. And like, I'm over here changing lives because people don't smell. Like, it's just this kind of funny thing. But yeah, it is nice to actually have a fun, not so serious, deep leg of my business. So I enjoy that.
That's fantastic. And congratulations on that. But that also is a great lead in for those folks buying that product to find their way to Brain Body Speak and all
Yeah.
the amazing things that you're doing with that.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like they find that because that's the one that sort of has that virality element. And then,
Yeah.
of course, we introduce them to everything else we do. Like, hey, like, you found this product, but did you know that you really need magnesium? And we just kind of lead in from there. We're in a culture where everything should be so extreme and big and just profound that people are expecting me to sell them, like, I don't know, some $1,000 package with like 14 different supplements for a 30-day detox. And I'm like, just get magnesium. Like, just start with this one thing. So I literally downsell people, and magnesium is always like the number one thing that I tell them to do. It's like the superhero.
Well, you're smart, and that's the way to go with it. Like, because I'm all about simplicity, and if there's 13 levels of something, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, if it's start with magnesium, I'm in, and then one thing usually leads to another for me. I need easy, like, okay, get me going on this first, and then take me to the next level. But like, don't give it to me all at once like that in a package. Like, I think you're smart to do it that way. That's awesome.
Yeah. And that kind of is the same way that I do, in my therapy practice and stuff. Again, people are used to being sold these like crazy retreat experiences of go deep and vomit your trauma out and plant medicine and all of this stuff. And I'm like, actually, you probably just need to learn how to sit still for 2 minutes a day and take 5 deep breaths. Like,
there it is.
So low barrier to entry. And people are just actually causing so much more dysfunction to their bodies with supplements and all of these extreme modalities that just their body is a pendulum, just swinging from one extreme to the other. So that's my approach from a very scientific lens across the board, is low, slow, small, consistent build over time. Like, that's how it has to be. And our society does not support that. So it's kind of hard to be heard through that noise sometimes. But yeah, that's the base of everything that I do.
Absolutely. Just simple box breathing. I found my way to box breathing. That was my first step into breathing exercises.
Yeah.
And then simple walking, just easy things like that, hydration, and then just like you said, finding your way to simple supplements. What is Zen in a bottle?
So that is my product line. That's our whole exclusive product line. It actually started as a CBD company. For a little back context, I had a brain injury that went like unmanaged for many, many years, had a lot of health issues. And then I kind of like flatlined, got very, very chronically sick in 2018. And it was basically a brain and nervous system disease that had developed. And so I was debilitated and could hardly function. CBD was one of the things that I found that was able to alleviate my pain and like literally give me just a little bit of clear thinking and functionality. And I had always loved the plant, but because I was so sick, I couldn't go and do a lot of these other things that I was used to doing, like going to meetings and hosting retreats. And so I literally launched that company as a CBD company from my bed while I was chronically ill, because the only thing that was like keeping me upright was actually the right nutrients, and CBD was one of them. So it started as that. And then I kept just evolving new product lines. Again, like my background was fitness, health, and nutrition for many, many years prior to what I do now. And so I always knew that like the power of the right nutrients were just foundational, you know? And so I just took all of that research, that background, that education, and then of course took it much, much further and developed that product line. So everything again is really designed to support the stress response. Like we have so much stress on a daily basis. Society hasn't really come to this realization that our stress level is just a million times more than it's ever been in human history, and that we're just going at like full speed and like our bodies are really crashing and burning. So there's a lot of things that go into that: stress management, like screen time management, you know, sleep optimization, all of that. But the right micronutrients are so key too. So it's just a huge thing that I'm passionate about, and like creating actual quality science-backed products that aren't about trends and fads and extremes, which is what the majority of the supplement industry is about. It was a big passion. So that was one of those like blessings that I was able to create that company and work from bed like I did, because I always wanted to do it. But if I had been doing all the other things, I probably would have never launched that company. And it's just continued to grow. It, actually, next month is our 6th year.
Wow.
So, yeah. It's like, I know it's crazy because I feel like I just launched it. But yeah, 40 products later and 6 years later, we're
It's
still,
like the days are long, but the years are fast.
yeah,
Right? Isn't that
exactly,
weird?
exactly. Yeah.
That I always get goosebumps when I talk with you, because I know we're Legacy Tribe, but I feel we're like Soul Tribe too, because
Yeah.
I get goosebumps every time we talk, because everything you say is so relatable and on point with my journey. Also, I haven't launched any product lines like you have, but CBD was huge for me. I had taken on so much stress due to all the curveballs that are thrown at you when you start a business. I ended up manifesting an autoimmune disorder called alopecia areata, which
Yeah.
attacks your hair follicles, and it's the mind, body, gut. It was like
Mhm.
your gut attacks. And so I found my way to CBD, and that
Yeah.
was like, it was so therapeutic for me, and it was so good. And I saw benefits from it. It
Yeah.
helped me. And so
Yeah.
I think that's amazing that you were able to launch that literally from your bed while you were experiencing that. I was
Yeah.
just, yeah. I
It,
wish I
it
would have found my way to you long years ago.
Yeah, yeah, it was such an incredible plant and journey. And like, I had owned a brick and mortar for 8 years. So I owned like a gym and wellness center. And that was so like just grunt work, ground level, client focused. We didn't do marketing. I never went to a single like networking event. Like, I literally launched this company when I'm 23 years old. Actually, that's how I found Bedros, our mentor. Is like I was listening to him in my little apartment, and you know, on YouTube and stuff. But like, I created this thing and it just grew organically. It grew because the service and the community was so powerful that people would bring other people in. And
Yeah.
so going to an e-com world, like I just absolutely had no freaking idea what I was doing. It started well enough of, oh, I'll just do this product or whatever. But I just wish, like, people have no idea the 9 million moving parts with a product line and behind the scenes and the plugins and the applications and this and this and this. And then you add a high risk industry like
Yeah.
CBD, and it was 1,000 times harder because we couldn't advertise, we couldn't do anything. And it was actually last year. So our product line with CBD was really, really unique. We had like 23 patents on this extraction, and it was very, very different. Our manufacturer literally with zero warning, after 5 years of building this CBD company from the ground up, it being our flagship product, I woke up one morning and I had this like gut instinct, and I'm very in tune and intuitive and stuff, and I'm not even kidding. I woke up and I was like, something's wrong. And I text the main guy that was responsible for like our order fulfillment, and I was just like, is everything okay? And he said, we just sold our extraction equipment to an alcohol company. They literally closed the doors and didn't give us any warning,
Oh,
anything. But like intuitively, I felt it in my body when I woke up, and like I sent him a message and I was just like, hey, so I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something that I just was like, I've got to make contact. And he's like, hey, Holly, this happened, and like we're done, like ground zero. The hemp industry was not lucrative enough for them, but they were able to use that vapor extraction for alcohol in a way that would be much more lucrative. And that was like the biggest smack in the face for so many reasons. For one, just zero warning preparation. It was my baby. It was something I was so passionate about. But then just the irony of the fact I don't drink, and like this world of trying to be in the health space when people are like, drink, 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 drink. I was just like, of course they sold it to alcohol because people would
Yeah.
rather get drunk than healthy. And it pissed me off so much. But it was a huge shift for us where I was like, now I can move more towards the beauty space. We can open up marketing and advertising channels that we didn't have before. There was a lot of opportunities in it, but like anything that you lose in business, like it's a gut punch, and there's a grieving process, especially when you like birth something into the world and then no warning, it's gone. So I feel like people don't talk about like the emotional component and connection you have to your business like that, but it was hard, but we're just like a year out of that, getting a lot more traction in the beauty space and kind of defining things. But CBD as a whole is amazing. I wish that people preferred that over alcohol.
I hope we're going in that direction. It's so funny that you brought this up today because I was just thinking about it while I was driving in my car earlier, how many people take antidepressants and drink. I was like, that's like canceling it out, right? It's the antidepressants aren't working if you're drinking. And you know what I mean? It's just a double-edged sword there. Like,
it really is. And like to speak on that note, like being in the entrepreneur space, like I think that's why the Legacy Tribe is so different, and the meetups and stuff like we've met at are so different, is that, they may have alcohol there, but it's not like the center. The center is half the people woke up and worked out at 5 a.m. and the food was healthy. And everything that I do from a business perspective, I try to, like, health is always at the center. And everything else that people do for their mental health, for their business health or whatever, it, like you said, it's actually going against it. Like, I don't want to go to a networking event to build business relationships where I'm drunk, they're drunk, they don't remember half the conversation. The next day, they're so scattered and anxious, they can't even do a follow-up. And then that's the only way we actually connected, was because we were both drinking. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
I know. I feel that too. And
it's so hard to see that being the culture of, like, the culture of wellness. It's like the mom wine culture. There's all of these different groups that not only normalize, because normalizing is one thing, but creating a culture that actively encourages it, like,
right,
a whole other like side tangent. But if you look at every single piece of media and TV, it's women drinking wine. In the 80s and 90s, it was people smoking in every show.
Yes,
that's what people did. And now it's just like, I mean, I don't watch a lot of TV, but literally I psychoanalyze everything when I do. And I just noticed that like every single thing revolves around pouring a glass of wine or whatever. And I'm just like, man, this is crazy. So it's that like indoctrination of, this is what we do. This is what we do to get together. This is how we connect. This is how we're social. And this is how we network. And I'm like,
and a lot of times that is the primary focus. It is the alcohol. So like it's the alcohol that's the primary focus, but it's the business or the entrepreneurial bait that's the vehicle to get to the drinking at the event. And it's just those networks I really found myself away from. Right.
Well, and that's the interesting dynamic about it too, is that people are very uncomfortable when you're the outlier who's not like in the group think. And they do actively. I'm like, we're like almost 40 years old here. Like, why are you trying to force this? Like, no, just drink, or no, just eat this or whatever. And even when I was a fitness competitor years and years ago, like trying to go to a cookout, and maybe not indulging in all the things.
Yes.
Or just like, no, eat this because it makes me uncomfortable if you don't. Like,
that's a thing. It's a thing. I've always had more of a lean body. I'm a hard gainer. The trick for me is to eat clean, work out on a consistent basis, and like juicing vegetables, eating chicken, broccoli, rice, like eating a clean diet actually helped me put on muscle weight. So then I would be at those cookouts and things like that. And it's not like I don't enjoy the cheat food, if you want to call it that. I don't mind those things, but like when I'm on a mission to, for my health and fitness, then like I can steer clear of all that stuff.
The fitness example is such a huge thing because I was a lot more social in terms of, I was bartending when I actually first started my fitness career. So I was in, again, polar opposite worlds where I was always being invited to all of these things that revolved around drinking and food and barbecue or whatever. And then I would like literally bring my little fitness bag with my meal prep and my water, and people, they would get so uncomfortable and they would instantly go on the defense, and they just did not want to be in the company of someone that they thought was going to judge them and be that mirror for what they weren't doing. And so,
Yes.
yeah, they project a lot of stuff on you. And it's interesting because even in the trauma space, I'm like, yeah, I work with trauma and, anxiety, or like however I speak what I do, it's the same thing where people are like, oh, are you judging me? Can you tell I'm anxious? Can you tell how dysregulated I am? And I'm like, I can, but I'm also not judging you.
Right. And I get that about you too. It's funny because in the mental health space, you get a lot of people. It's just, we're just living in an overdiagnosed world right now. And
Yeah.
people that are not in the capacity to be handing out diagnosis are handing out diagnosis.
Yeah.
And you're not, you know what I mean? I know that you have the background that you have, and I've seen you interact with people, and you're not doing that. And I appreciate that about you.
You just spoke on a point that I get really spicy about, the whole rampant world of self-proclaimed like coaches and people that just are speaking on topics that they have no clinical training and no expertise in. And it's really just this pathology and like this epidemic of just, I don't even know how to sum it up, but it's
good word, epidemic. I'll tell you that. That was
it's
on.
like there's a lot of things that I think are really, really, really terrible about social media and the way that changes our brains and our nervous systems. And there's science to prove that. But one of the elements that people aren't really talking about that I try to speak a lot about is just this fact that the amount of followers somehow is the currency for qualifications. And it's so backwards. Like the true like clinical practitioners that are changing the world and have PhDs and doing research and, all of this stuff, like the real deal people, they're not creating dancing TikToks with 10 million followers. So people have this completely distorted framework and mindset around this person must be legit because they have 10,000 followers. So I'm going to listen to everything they say. And it is just creating these wildfires of like misinformation. And like you said, the diagnosis, like everybody's a narcissist now, everybody's bipolar, everybody's all of this stuff. And everything's a trauma response now. Everything's because of high cortisol. And I'm just like, oh, and before we even hopped on like the live, I told you, like, I cringe at even remotely being lumped in with like a wellness influencer or anything, because I'm like, I never, ever, ever want people to think that like that is my world, because I've seen how toxic that world is.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a lot to navigate with, because people will also, they'll come to you and they're like, yeah, but this person said, and I'm like, did you happen to ask if that person has any clinical training, qualification, certification, license, anything at all? Because otherwise, like, where are they getting this information? So
I only like to speak from experience, and I know you do too. And that's just where I come from with any topic I get on. It's just, I just want to share experiences and hear other people's stories. And not everything works the same for everyone. Not everyone has the same outcome to any treatment.
Yeah. And that's the way that like a lot of these big, huge accounts are so popular. Is the reason that social media is so damaging is because of that like extreme nature. Like you're in or you're out, there's no in between. They don't allow people to be their individual selves. It's like you're in the club or you're outside of the club. And if you go against the club, then the trolls and everybody are going to come for you. So there's just a lot of layers to that. And that's why I have a problem with that specifically. It's not to say that there aren't incredible people that have gone through things and their experience and their just core nature. I mean, honestly, I have seen it, that there are people with zero qualifications that can honestly help someone in a single session better than someone with 20 years and all the academics. So it's not so black and white, but what the big issue is the safety, the ethics, the legalities, the scope of practice, those types of things that the influencer world doesn't even know. And like an example of that, just speaking on like the business mentorship side, there's so many accounts out there that will make claims of, I made this much money and here's my manufactured screenshot and I'll show you how to do it for $10,000. Well, the FTC literally is cracking down on that. And the other day I was on this mastermind call, and the leader, who I really respect, it's one of the other people that I vetted out, she mentions this. She's like, the world is changing and these new regulations. 200 people on this call. And as soon as she said FTC, 30 comments popped up. What's the FTC? And I'm like, you shouldn't be in this room if you don't know what the FTC is. This is a problem. And
explain what the FTC is for the audience.
Yeah. So the Federal Trade Commission, they moderate, the legalities around what you can say in advertising and marketing and false claims. They're cracking down on people buying fake followers and using that to gain leverage. They're cracking down on income claims with coaching programs. Even like PayPal, I think PayPal and Stripe both, maybe just Stripe, stopped working in the coaching industry because of all of like the lawsuits and that you can't really deliver a tangible in that way. So they were stopping payouts and stuff. They're cracking down a lot on that. And it's because these influencers with fake clout, and again, no legality, no form or comprehension of like ethics and how to actually approach a relationship with working with people, have really messed things up, and they've manipulated and exploited people. And so, yeah, the
Oh my
FCC
God.
is cracking down and all of
Yeah.
that.
I love how you hit on ethics, because I just remember taking ethics for substance abuse counseling, and
Yeah,
just all the various trainings that I've been through in
yeah,
my 27 years in the mental health field. We are held to such insane standards of ethics,
yeah,
standards and practices, that's where I think I have a disconnect with other people, that they don't have those those things in mind: ethics,
yeah,
standards, practices. And then we're held to, I'm sure you're familiar with HIPAA,
yeah,
privacy.
yeah,
Like those things are very important. And when I do business
yeah,
with other people and I realize that they have no standards, practices, ethics, or respect for something called HIPAA, which is
yeah,
privacy,
yeah,
that's where I'm just like, wow, how did you come this far? Like, how are you established in this manner when
yeah.
you don't even follow those standards and practices?
Right,
That's
right.
shocking.
We have ethics and laws and
Yes.
legalities for a reason, because these are very fragile situations. There's
People are
processes for a
vulnerable.
reason.
Absolutely.
100%. 100%. You don't just rip that open on a
No.
nutrition coaching call. And that's the type of thing that happens all the time.
Well, and I think to your point too, it's people end up other people's guinea pigs. Like
Yeah.
that woman was just her guinea pig, and
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
very unsafe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it feeds a lot of the ego, like the ego and the way the ego is fed from this manufactured. You can fake celebrity. Again, you can buy followers, you can buy clout, you can fabricate income papers, which is what a lot of these people do. You can write your own testimonials. It's all smoke and mirrors, really. You can
Yeah.
manufacture any of that, and then you can exploit people, and they're not exploiting people who have disposable income and who are mentally and physically well. They're exploiting people that are very broken, they're suffering, they're traumatized, they're desperate. And then they see these fake things and they're like, well, this person has the answer. And then they
Yeah.
get in those containers and they get so much more traumatized, because again, you're not, you have people dealing with trauma that have no trauma training whatsoever. And that is where I get really, really like defensive and protective of people. And I'm like,
Well, yeah, and look at the music industry right now. To your point of everything you just said, that is all bought, paid
mhm,
for, smoke and mirrors.
yeah,
Yeah, that industry is pretty toxic, and
God.
it's much like everything you just described.
Well, yeah, well, 100%. I felt that in the music industry, which is why I walked away from that. That was what
Well,
I originally.
yes, I was going to touch on that because you actually have background and history in the music
Mhm.
industry. Yes.
Yep, and I walked away from all of it to start my business, because I was like, I'm not going to sell my soul. Like, music was my first dream, my first love. I started writing songs and lyrics and playing at, 9, 10, 11 years old. And I moved to Nashville after I had ran away from home and was like, oh, I'm going to pursue music. And there were so many opportunities that I had where I was this close to a deal, a song being sold. I did have a record deal for a small time. Every single one of them over the 5 years that I actively pursued it came down to one choice. Are you going to sleep with somebody to get to
Right.
the next step? Like, no, there's no sugarcoating that. People think like country music, Nashville, it's all innocent. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And you are going to give up every single part of yourself to get to the next level. And I refused to do it. And that's when I actually started my company. I was like, maybe I'll go back to music at some point, but I don't want to be a part of this. Like, I was already into health and wellness. I didn't fit in that world again. I was like hauling around my chicken. Everyone else is doing shots. And I was like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore.
Yeah.
And I did go through a phase where I was heavy into drinking and drugs. I got a DUI. Like, I was in jail at 21 years old. And that was enough for me to be like, this is not the path. I course corrected. And so, yeah, that industry was so toxic and so distorted and shady. And again, on the surface, it's like you want this dream and you see this promise. Behind closed doors, it's not the same.
It's
And
dark and it's greasy. Yeah.
it's 100%. And then the spiritual world, I went through the same thing in that whole world because I studied religious science and all of these different spiritual realms, new age stuff. And I got a lot of value out of that. But that is a really, really dark, twisted place where some of the worst predators exist. I
Yes.
believe firmly
Spirituality is a beautiful cloak for a lot of toxic behavior.
it is.
Yes.
And that I always go by the quote, like, spirituality is the ego's favorite place to hide. And there are so many predators and dark narcissists, like true narcissists, who have this God complex, who create followings and again exploit people. I have the answer. I've never done a single course or training or anything, but I'm God. I have all the answers. I'm gonna save everything that
It's very cult-like. Yeah.
100%.
Scary.
Which I
And
also
vulnerable people find their way to those people because they think
yeah.
that they're safe and it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people with religious trauma because I had a lot of that. Like I actually that's why I ran away from home at 16 years old as I grew up in a cult religion
We
and
have that in common.
yeah, like had a lot of trauma there and so I was trying to find my new space. Like I believe in God and I believe in something and let me try on all of this stuff. And so you're broken, you're lost, you kind of don't have that like core identity of I'm a Christian and these are my Christian values or whatever.
Right.
And then yeah, predators, the stories and the things that I've seen behind closed doors in the plant medicine space and the spiritual space and the all those spaces are like the worst of the worst. And it happens in business too. Like I feel like I've seen kind of the worst of the worst in all industries because I've gone really deep in them. But that's also what makes me the advocate that I am and the practitioner that I am.
Well, there it is right there. You can't know without experience. Experience is the best teacher. You're like an old soul.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of experience and you live to tell, you get to share, and you're part of the 1%, right? Like not everyone is that blessed to, come out on the other side of all those experiences.
The things that you create out of your hardship are typically your life's purpose. And I try not to overly romanticize that because the trauma and some of the things I've been through I'm not like, oh, I'm so happy I went through that. But no, you don't really get
Right.
a choice, right? You go
Yeah.
through it. And then the best that I have always tried to do is look at the problems and look at the things that happened to me from the exploitation, from abuse, from all of the things that I've experienced personally, professionally, academically, look at the problems and then try to create the solutions. I mean, even within in a bottle, it's like 90% of supplements out there aren't even tested for heavy metals. And like, that's a big problem that can make people really sick. So that is like the core concept that fuels every single thing I do, right down to the silly deodorant that I created. I'm like, how is it 2020 and like we still don't have a deodorant that works? Like, so I literally went mad scientist and created this thing like in my house with my little lab. It's just like looking for the problems, and
What is that ingredient in roll-on deodorant that they say causes dementia? What is that ingredient?
aluminum.
Aluminum. Yes. God, it was escaping me. And I know that.
Yeah.
Gosh, you're right. Deodorant is very toxic.
There's so many problems in the world. And I think most people are used to looking at problems and just complaining about them. They're like, oh, this problem. I vent and I'll rant. I don't have a problem being spicy because I don't spiritually bypass and live in this whole like only speak positive. But I'm like, if I'm talking about a problem, you better believe that I'm doing something in some capacity to actually rectify it.
Right. Exactly.
That's a big difference. Like
Yeah.
talk about it, but like actually what are you doing to create it? And I think that's a whole other epidemic of people that just love to complain and talk about problems, but not be proactive to change in their own life and like out there.
Right. You got to have solutions. I'm
Yeah.
all about solutions too. If there's a problem, let's find the solution. I love
Yeah.
that you're about solutions. That's
Yeah.
great. You have so many good endeavors happening right now. That's awesome.
I'm excited about them. I mean, I definitely get buried in the back end stuff of business. Like I'm a true blue entrepreneur creative. So the creation process is the fun process. When you see things moving forward, that's a fun process. But I will never, ever give the illusion that I love every part of owning a business because I hate a lot of it. Like,
well, this is a great segue into my next topic. I wanted to segue into facing adversity with, just employees. In the same day, I think in the very same day, you were just singing your right hand's praises and you were so happy and you were so excited, to speak on behalf of your right hand and your executive assistant. And then just hours later, I ran into you and it was boom, curveball.
Yeah.
You faced that hurdle, and you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So as anybody in the entrepreneur space, or even just leadership, if they've been a manager or whatever, they probably know that like finding the right people that really perform and excel is like the number one thing that moves your company forward. And it's the hardest thing to navigate. So I had went through a huge, I kind of went on a firing spree in like 2021. So many things were just not the level that I wanted. And I had to literally go to ground zero and be willing to do that and hold off until I found the right fits. So there was this huge year. I thought I was going to find the right fits like immediately. And I was not finding the right fits. And again, I had to be willing to say, I would rather stall our progress and stay right here instead of just replace with whoever. So that's a little bit of the backstory of me leading to literally January of this year, finding like my dream unicorn executive assistant. Like that's typically one of the most important players for a CEO, is like that one person who can double as you. Tons and tons of interviews, find this girl. She's absolutely incredible. She like exceeds all expectation. I'm like, I will give you anything in the world. Just never leave me. I mean, it was just like next level. And so many things happened because of her. And the day after we had this coaching day with Bedros, and I'm inspired and I've just got this plan ready to go, I literally wake up and I get a message from her. And I hadn't heard from her that Friday, which she'd never done. And so I kind of actually already knew. I was like, again, intuitive.
Yeah.
Like something's going on. And she's like, she writes this email and she's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I just have to tell you now. And she had gotten unexpectedly pregnant and she had a lot of medical issues. And she's like, I literally can't even leave bed. Like, and that has to be my full priority. I can't work. I can't deliver. Having dealt with chronic health issues and stuff from the get-go, I had told her, I was like, your health is always most important. Just communicate with me, but whatever it is. But this being such an unexpected thing and that it being such a critical medical stuff, it wasn't like I had the flu. She's just like, I know that I'm not going to actually be able to work for you anymore. And zero warning, not a 2-week transition phase, not let's get somebody else in. It was bad. And, first and foremost, I treated her as a human of course, I understand. Like, I'm so sorry, whatever you need. But then it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Literally, like, it was just not what I expected to wake up to that morning. But I also think that I was in a good place to be on such a high and to be so empowered that I didn't crumble. I who knows, maybe if I had been having a bad week overall, I would have just been like, forget it. Like,
well, we crossed paths as that happened. So we sat there and talked, and you were just so graceful about all of it. And I appreciate that about you. And that was inspiring for me because I have been in your shoes so many times. It's not even funny. It's almost like I've become numb to that. And I'm just always waiting for that to happen. So that's why I'm a big believer in cross training. Mm-hmm. But I think like when you have that person, that can happen too. And you have to have that backup plan, but almost no one ever does because you still have in the back of your mind that, okay, like I'm moving forward onto the next project and this person's got it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what we had just talked about being a solutionary is what I call it. Like, are you a solutionary? Are you?
I like that.
So a couple things had gotten delayed where we were actually supposed to start like really building out SOPs and cross training and bringing more people on. And it literally just got delayed just a little bit. If this had happened a month prior or we were able to do that, the transition would have been a lot easier. You literally never know. People could get in an accident. They could have a medical emergency. So many things could happen. So I could sit there and I could be all dramatic about it and I could whine and cry and be like, I can't get new help. And again, it's one thing to vent about it. It is a struggle. But what did I do that I could do better next time? Like, that's what I always try to put my focus on. For one, next time I'm actually going to be hiring to and recording everything using this new software to create all this systematized stuff so that I don't have to be at this point again. Cool. Lesson learned. We're going to pivot. We're going to do this better, stronger next time. And then, of course, again, like you said, reframing the turnover. Like we talked about this at the hotel where Leah Hormozy actually had mentioned once, I'll hear like one statement sometimes that just really resonates and changes everything. But she talked about entrepreneurs always complaining. They invest in people, they build them up, they train them, and then they leave, and how that's the worst thing that happens. And she has a perspective of you want them to leave. Like that's a reflection of really good leadership. Actually get them so next level and train and empower them so much that they actually want to leave. And I was like, Well, that's a radical concept. Like,
I'm
cool.
having
That
a
actually feels
flashback because yes, we did talk about this at the hotel because leaders make
yeah.
leaders, and that's it at the end of the day. So I started taking
Yeah.
it as a compliment because I mean, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
leaders make leaders, and I don't want anybody to stay stagnant. I was so
Yeah.
blessed, and I think you've had the same experience where you never did the same thing for too long. You like
Mhm.
organically went into the next position of leadership throughout your career, and that was like such a blessing for me because I was always learning, always growing, and I never got stagnant. And I would never
Yeah.
want someone to be in that position. But you do have people that want to be a foot soldier. They don't want a
Mhm.
leadership position. And I'm
Yeah.
always happy to look and seek that out. I'm pretty good about that. Sometimes we
Mhm.
want to put people in leadership positions that don't want to be in them.
Yeah.
And just because they're so good and you want to take them to the next level and you're like, wow, you're just amazing and a blessing. And I'm so honored to be
Yeah.
able to work with you. And I want to take you with me. But they're
Yeah.
like, I'm cool. I just want to be in this position and this works for me, my life, and my family. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you're a blessing for that too. And we
Yeah.
need those folks too. Not everybody
100%.
wants to go to the next level, but
Yeah.
um to your point, yes, I think that you have to reframe that, just like the woman that you referenced mentioned. I think that it's good, and we did touch on that. Yes.
Exactly. And it's so important too. If you really, I look at everything like it has a neurological lens or hormonal lens, a psychological lens, a spiritual lens. Like I can, especially because my background is in all of those things, I love to look at different sides of things. And what I think happens in leadership when we get so attached to people is we really, really step into our ego and controlling. And it speaks to, I need you to be this way forever, just like
Yeah.
this, and never leave. Or from the flip side, like you mentioned, you see someone's potential and you're like, if you would just do this better and like come along with me. And like ultimately, we're kind of trying to take away people's autonomy
I
because we
know.
think like we know
Yes.
it all, we can manage it all, you should stay with us forever. And so it's just this interesting lens that if you look at what feels the best for me to actually empower people, to let the people who want to move forward rise to the top, to support the people that want to stay in those like foot soldier, roles that you mentioned, and then being okay with people having their own choices and evolving. That feels a lot better than like
It is. Well, once you start, you launch your own business and you're an entrepreneur and you're a visionary like you are and you're creative and all the things, you start seeing things in other people.
yeah.
And I did. And so it was like, I would like mentally be starting a business for somebody in my head. I'm like, here's your
Oh,
gifts and here's what you could do. And I can help you. You
yeah.
know what I mean? And I'm
Failure
just like, I get all
complex.
excited. I had to dial that back like crazy over the
Yeah.
last few years because I had a nasty habit of doing that. Like I've already created someone's logo for them. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is what you should really be doing, and here's what your gifts are. But like they have absolutely no desire to do those things. And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
interesting. So I think meeting people where they're at is really what suits us best, is just
Yeah.
kind of accepting, okay, yeah, we don't have that control, but you get excited for people as a leader. You want to, take people to the next level. It's very exciting if you have someone that really wants to go there. But like
Yeah.
I said, and like you said too, just kind of meeting people where they're at in those foot soldier positions, and
Yeah.
that's okay too, because we need those folks. I don't
Mhm.
back to kind of the toxic influencers. You hear so many people telling everybody to quit their 9 to 5, like quit your
Yeah.
job and start a business. Not everybody can. I mean, I
Yeah.
learned that just by getting inspired by people and trying to inspire people to do that. I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, wow, not everyone really can do that.
100%. And again, if we think that, so there's two parts of this. One of there's a dichotomy to all of this. One part really is that you see something in somebody and you want to inspire them. And there are people in this world that kind of have this x-ray vision for seeing people's skills and talents. And those people make great coaches. Like Bedros does that, like that is a part of being human that's beautiful. But then on the other end of the spectrum, which it can often go to, it's easy to get so fixated on other people and trying to control other people that we're not looking at our own stuff. And
Yeah.
then again, we're kind of disappointed because they're like, if they would only act this way or if they could only see it. I did that a lot in my early career because I was, let me save every person. I was in a lot of really bad relationships because I'm like, I can see your potential. Let me fix you. And then we do that in business too. I would do the same thing. I wanted the underqualified underdog who I could build, like pour into, that met me where I felt like I was the underdog. I wanted that opportunity. I built up. So then I would try to find people like that too. but if they don't have that initiative and they're not actively seeking that, you just waste so much energy and your resources. And maybe you actually like drag them along, you get them convinced for a minute. Oh, okay. But it's not real. It's not.
Oh my God, you are right on target. And that is so funny. Isn't it weird when you see yourself in somebody else like that? I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I did that with friendships too. In fact, like when I went through that, like cutting so many people out of my companies, that was 2021. And then 2022, I kind of did the same thing. Like I just did this massive inventory on my life and my personal relationships. And they were so imbalanced in the way that I was always doing that for everybody. And I'm like, again, people should be paying me for this. And it's one thing to be there for a friend, but when you feel like you are always trying to drag them along and convince them and pour into them and build them up, and then you're also never getting any of that back, I was like, this is exhausting and I'm tired of this. Like, I only want people that actually want to be in my life and want to reciprocate things. Same thing with the way I approach the hiring process. Because I was like, I only want people that are like actively moving towards this, because I do not have the energy to drag people along anymore.
Yeah.
And when
it's depleting, you're depleted.
100%. And again, you can actually convince people for a minute, but they're siphoning your energy. It's like they're by osmosis getting your motivation, but you can only do that so long. And it's one thing to spark or to speak into somebody when they're at a low point. And again, they're like, I needed to hear that. It's another thing for their baseline to be here, and to get them to do anything, you have to give 100% of your battery. And that was a hard lesson that I spent a lot of years learning. And then all of a sudden I was just like, nope, no more. And I cut out a lot of friendships, that long-term friendships that just were really, really, really draining me in every way. And I was like, I just can't do this. It sounds cruel, but it's kind of like almost this mother nature of like, to go where I want to go, I can't drag these people along.
Well, and that makes perfect sense. I hear everything you're saying, and I've experienced it too. And like I've had conversations with other connections of mine where I say, sometimes you just organically come to the end of the road with folks. And if you come back together down the road, great. If not, that's okay too. But like, you can't take everybody with you, and not everybody is meant to go forward with you.
Right.
Like, you know, that cheesy, whatever, that cliche saying, like sometimes people come into your life for a reason or a season, or you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's true.
100%. And it is, I've went through that transition a lot. So I went through it enough times that I tend to really be able to recognize it and come to terms with it. I feel like I'm a rapid evolver, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs are. Like, you're evolving, you're growing, and being a business owner is kind of like being in a pressure cooker of self-development, you know, so you're always kind of moving quickly. And if you don't have other people that are also moving, not necessarily in the same direction, but just moving in some way and changing, it's hard to have those long-term relationships and friendships, because you're a different person year after year after year. And so it is hard to walk away from them. But there's also so much beauty when you truly cut ties with it, where you're kind of like, you have this limbo state of like a clean slate, and you get to really intentionally choose the people you want to be around, the new ways you want to fill that space. And that is what takes you to the next level. Like, it's so incredibly powerful to be in those sort of like ground zero. Like, how am I going to rebuild this? And some of the people that I have built friendships and relationships with in the last year and a half, 2 years, are people unlike I have never been connected to people like this in my entire life. And so it took that full clearing space. Sometimes people want to keep those people still close. They don't want to fully transition, but I find to really have the space for the new, you kind of do have to fully let go.
I agree with you. You just made a great point. And, you know, even though I've known that for years, and that's been an evolving process for me, it's never easy. And it's not. Some people you just want to hold on to, but it only makes things worse. It only sets you back farther than puts you ahead. And I've been getting really excited lately, because I had gotten so addicted to kind of cutting ties and trying to move forward so I can be healthy. And I'm super independent, and I'm great on my own, and I love that about me. And like, I'm the type of person that can go to a movie by themselves, or go out to dinner by myself, or go out for coffee by myself, all those things. I'm not a codependent person, and I've never been. And so I appreciate my privacy and my alone time, but as the year has evolved with Legacy Tribe and coaching with Bedros and meeting all these amazing people like yourself, I've just been getting excited lately, like internally happy again because I haven't had it in a long time
Yeah.
because I was coming to the end of the road with so many people for
Yeah.
so long that I was
Yeah.
like, wow, I don't really have anything to look forward to. It was almost depressing in a way, but I was okay with everything. I was
Yeah.
okay with that, but it's great when you're surrounded by people that uplift you too and that get you excited and that you can relate to.
Yeah.
It's like there's nothing beats that, you know.
Truly, truly. And my chronic illness was, it was a dark, like almost 6 years for many, many reasons. The physical part of being that sick and like the illness that I had was excruciating to like exist and breathe. But the mental and emotional and psychological toll of being that isolated, because I had just moved to Charlotte. Like I left a company that I had built that was so community driven, and I would see, 20, 30, 40 clients every day. Like I had this family and this home, and then I moved to a new city. I get chronically sick. My husband is working a million hours, and I was so catastrophically alone, and I had nothing. Not just for a season, again, not for a month or two, not for even a year, but like literally almost 6 years. That level of isolation, you do create a hyper independence. You
Yeah.
learn to function and exist by yourself, but it was such a hole and a void that was just there. Like it was just this longing for like connection and real deep connection. And Legacy Tribe was a part of that, getting back out into the world. And
Yeah.
local community events and stuff, like each time, each new connection, like you said, it's kind of like brings something back to life where you're like, man, I can be in my own world and in my own existence, but like it's not necessarily ideal. Like surviving and being able to do something doesn't make it like the best thing. And it's really powerful when those connections start coming online and you just realize like, wow, there's some really incredible humans on this planet.
Human connection is great. And
Yeah.
to your point, through this journey, segueing into a deep connection with pets and animals.
Yeah.
You and I talked about that, and we both have that. And I think that you shared with me during that time, you heavily connected with your animals.
Yeah.
And I did too. I had animals my whole life, but when I had started up my business, I didn't have any. And prior to that, I had lost a Great Dane, and then I was like, oh my God, I'm never, getting another animal again. Went through this like deep process with it, and then I was finally ready. I got to a point where I was ready and I needed some connection, and I got Frankie, my Great Dane. Her birthday was yesterday.
Yeah.
And she just recently passed away, but I had her for almost 5 years, and I just found connection and healing through my dog, and I know you did too.
Losing my dog Bama last year, it's just been a year just now, like was the thing that wrecked me in a way that I literally didn't think I was like going to survive. Like I did not think that I was ever going to see the other side of it. It just sent me to such a dark place, and it was such a visceral, deep pain and grief that I just never saw coming. With all the clinical understanding and all the things that I do, I thought I would be prepared and have the tools. I was willing to feel. I gave myself a week off, all of it. And it just took me under. It made me question every single thing that I thought I knew about grief and love and loss. But yeah, I think because of, all of my pets have always meant something to me. But I think going through that 6 years of chronic illness and isolation, like they were all I had. And I think the depths of the bond for certain people and animals, especially when they're in those isolated seasons, is so much deeper than people that a pet is like an afterthought, in their life. And so that's what she was to me. That's what my other two are. And yeah, it absolutely gutted me in a way I couldn't even fathom. And I was like, I don't believe that people heal. Like I'm never going to get over this. This is just the end for me. But
and we know, and we have the tools, and again, I can relate. And it was the same for me. And I told you just before we met up, you just have to accept the grief process, and it will run its course for the rest of your life is basically what that is. And it's just you making peace with the situation, and that's what it is. But I can relate, and there is nothing deeper than that close bond when you're in that season of isolation. And that's what it was for me too. For many, many years, it was isolation. Entrepreneurship is lonely. It's very telling of your character when you can make it through those seasons of deep, dark isolation and come out on the other side. I was I realized I'm stronger than I ever realized I was. And I can say the same about you. And I mean, you're very resilient, and it's very inspiring to talk to you. Anytime I get a conversation with you, I'm just like all wired up about it, because you inspire me. And I think that you have a beautiful story, and you've been on this amazing journey, and I'm proud of everything that you've accomplished. I think that you're an amazing human.
Yeah, well, right back at you. I mean, I feel like that's just a reflection of everything that you've gone through as well. And I feel like when you've had a similar experience, the depth of that appreciation, that acknowledgement is so much more profound. And that's why I love talking about this stuff too, is because for me, the whole pet thing, again, you would hear about people losing their pet and it's hard and it's sad, but I had never really heard anybody ever talk about this was the thing that almost broke me. This took me under. Like I was literally crying hysterically in bed for a week. And I thought I was like crazy until I really started going into certain containers and groups and researching more, because I literally thought, I was like, something is not right here. Like this is
Right.
not what I thought it was going to be. And it was really my perception of it that I thought it was going to be different. And there was a friend of mine who had lost her dog last year, actually the friend that I ended up parting ways with. She had lost her dog, and I remember she was like sad. She took the weekend, and then her dog transitioned, and she was just like, I'm good. Like there's just this peace, you know, I'm at peace. And I hate to say it, but because that friendship, I didn't have the awareness quite yet. I was so close with her that to me, I just kind of took that and I was like, okay, so it's going to be like a couple days and you get close and then it happens and then there's peace. Like in my mind, I just thought there's this milestone of peace after she's gone. And for a year I had that and I was holding on to that. We had her actually put down Bama in home. So it was this beautiful thing. I made it very
Oh, wow.
spiritual, like lit candles, did like this little altar. I'm a very spiritual person and I like everything was perfect for her. I had rainbows and butterflies and fresh flowers and all of this. And like the second she was gone, literally all I could say was, I can't process. Like I was like dry heaving, trying to catch my breath. And I just kept saying, I can't process. I can't process. I can't process. And there was something psychologically in that moment where like everything did shut down. Like my brain could not actually process her being gone. And I don't, months and months and months later, it was almost like something just got frozen in time for me. Like the process, it was too big, it was too much. And neurologically, somatically, I kind of understood this as an outside observer, but I was still experiencing it as a human. And that peace never came. Like it never, ever came. It was like after she was gone, there was this massive void of emptiness of now I have to miss her. There wasn't this, I walked into the peace room. Now I walk into now she's gone. And it's this just black hole of pain. And I was so pissed about that. It wasn't my friend's fault. Again, that was her experience and that's fine. But because you don't see people talk about the deeper layers because it makes people uncomfortable. And then you maybe see it on TV or you know somebody that's like, it's hard, but you know, the next day it's better, you're at peace. And then you're completely different. You're like, okay, well, I must be like psychologically ill because I can't get out of bed. But again, once I went in deeper into the rooms and like Facebook groups and stuff, you'll see people like there are so many people where this is the thing that they do not recover from.
I'm right with you. And I had experienced that. Like I couldn't get out of bed. I was like, but I had my other Dane, Ziggy. It was Ziggy is Frankie's brother. I got them from the same breeder. And so they were like legit. And they were very close. Like they slept together. All of us were together at all times. And so like my new normal was not having her there. And I was like, this is fucked. I couldn't process that. She's not there now. So it's like, it's weird. Like seeing her every morning when I woke up, I was like, this is weird. And I kept trying to go, about my life, like understanding like she's gone. I understand this. Like, I know this, I get it, but I didn't like mentally, like how you said, you're like, what is wrong with me? I was feeling the same way. I was like, I can't even, I would go to work out, like go about my regular schedule and my body wouldn't do it. I was like, am I broken? Like what the hell's happening here? I was like, what's going on with my brain function? It was like that.
It's just different. And it actually makes me think of earlier in the conversation when we talked about this whole like influencer world and everybody kind of having this template of this is how something is, or this is how you fix it. And grief is such a unique perspective. And really, like in my world, I talk about basically like the trauma bucket, you know, like you kind of have this this bucket that you have capacity for in life. And depending on how full your bucket is from chronic stress, chronic trauma, illness, loss, grief, all of these things pile up. And when you don't have something to counteract that, like really good friendships and maybe a spiritual belief or your health or, you know, all of these other things, then that bucket is overflowing. And then you just have another big trauma. It's not so easy to look at that as the same as somebody else who, again, that was maybe their second thing and they had all this other good going for them. It's really a mathematical equation of how much you can handle and take. And everybody's different with the way they connect with things. Like even as a kid, I had deep, profound connections with animals. Like
Same.
I will, if there's a spider in my shower and I'm in a shower, I'm going to get out butt naked, run outside, transport it outside. Like that is what I do. Like I just have this connection with animals in general, much less like my babies who have been there. And I think that if we were more willing to have those conversations without like the judgment and the something's wrong with you because you love that much or you love that big, people would be able to accept that. And that was kind of my final thing, is the one thing that I did cling to, the only thing that I had, because my spiritual connection didn't save me like I thought it would. There were so many things that I thought were going to be like my saving grace that just weren't.
Yeah.
But the one thing that I got comfort in, the sliver of comfort, was I hurt this much because I loved that big. Like that was it. I hurt this much because I literally loved that little 14-pound dog that I had for 12 years, like in such an enormous way. And that is hard, but it's beautiful. Like that was all. Like that was the only thing that I had. And the anticipatory grief, I think, is another thing that people don't talk about. I actually had like 5 weeks. Bama's transition was pretty unexpected because she was fine and then she wasn't, but I actually had 5 weeks to prepare. And I know a lot of people don't get that. I know you didn't get that. And so then the secondary trauma was looking at my other dogs and transporting myself to the future of, if I feel this way about this, I'm not going to handle losing another one. And then every little thing that would go wrong, I was like, I can't handle it. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. And that's, again, goes back to that like nervous system and brain capacity where your brain is in so much pain and it's so traumatized that it's already going in the future and grieving.
Oh my God. I'm doing it right now. I have to tell you, I'm catching myself doing it with Ziggy.
Yeah.
Like I watched him breathe heavy the other day and I was like, he's dying. I'm like, he's going into cardiac arrest. And like, I'm already mentally prepping. I'm like, that is the thing, again, that people don't talk about. Like my collective trauma with all of my pets, it sounds asinine with the amount of things that have happened between the three of them, like the craziest things. And I actually even just went through a traumatic situation with Neo where he was falsely diagnosed with brain cancer. And literally I was told he had like 2 weeks to live. And I did not think, I was like, I'm just done. This will actually kill me. I will not survive. Oh my God. You shared that story with me at the hotel. You got to touch on that story. That story is crazy. Yeah. So literally woke up one day and knew something wasn't right with him. He was kind of acting out of sorts. We started this whole 10-day process of going to all these different ER vets. I kept telling them that I thought it was something in his ear because from my neurological training, I know the ears can cause like balance issues and all this stuff. Kept being dismissed. He kept getting sicker and sicker. He'd lost like 12 pounds. I mean, something was really wrong and we were just getting tossed around. And then we take him for this MRI thinking, okay, we're just going to see if it's an ear infection or whatever. And the vet calls and she's like, hi, he's out of the MRI, but we've got bad news. He does have brain cancer and it's really aggressive and it's really bad. And he probably has about a week or two to live. My dog was fine. Then my dog was like, not okay. I spent 7 days in the ER basically with him trying to get answers. And then it was, my dog has 2 years or two weeks to live. And this was just coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Bama that I was already dreading. And I was like, no. He's only 9. I needed at least 5 years to even remotely like comprehend that. And again, like I absolutely like lost my mind, like so hysterical. But the thing that I think one of the difficult components of Bama is I had been through years of health issues with her. And I was so like exhausted with feeling like
at some point you have to make that choice where you can't just continue to string them along.
Right.
On the other side of letting her go, I had all of this guilt and regret of, should I taken her to other vets? Should we tried something else? I had all of this second guessing that was really hard for me. Speaking to the note of how do you want to do things differently if you experience something that you don't love or that's painful in life, I took that and I was like, I refuse, if that is the case, I refuse to leave a single stone unturned. Like I just refuse. And so I went into like a 4-day psychotic escapade to figure out every brain treatment, every cancer treatment, every supplement protocol, every specialist. Like I literally did not sleep. And about 2.5 days in, we still hadn't got the official report of the MRI. And I start thinking, I'm like, all of his symptoms still speak to like a deep inner ear infection. Like, how could this be? How does he have cancer? Like he eats perfect. I spent $1,000 on his diet. All of this, it just didn't compute. And so I start researching, can an ear infection look like cancer on an MRI? I got like my PhD in reading MRIs from my laptop because it just didn't make sense. And turns out, after 14 days of this insanity, I had even called the place that had actually helped Bama transition and looked into making an appointment because he was so sick. And I literally thought brain cancer was eating him alive. And I was like, I have to make this choice. I can't let him suffer. And I finally called the vet for the 9 millionth time. And I was like, has a radiologist looked at this report? Because I think that there's something wrong and I need to speak to a radiologist. And I had started him on this whole holistic protocol for anti-cancer, anti-inflammatory, a natural antibiotic. I had insisted they give me whatever antibiotic they would for an ear infection. And they're like, it's not going to matter. He's going to die anyway. And I was like, I don't care. Like if he has 2 weeks, I want to at least treat the ear as if he has an ear infection. Like, let me do that. And within 24 hours, he got up, his eyes were open, he could stand upright. And I was like, if this was cancer, he wouldn't be responding in that way. And so kept going on with everything. And then 4 days after, 4 days of me grieving my dog, but desperately trying to do everything, we finally get the outside opinion from where the scans had been taken off. And they're like, there's maybe like a 1% chance that it could be cancer, but it's actually looks like it's this really horrible ear infection that spread to his brain and damaged his nerves and stuff. Cause it looked like he'd had a stroke and he couldn't stand upright and stuff. And they're like, but this is treatable. So good thing he's on the antibiotics. I'm like, the antibiotics that I insisted and demanded that you give me, even though you told me my dog was dying. So we kept him on that for a month, all of these natural protocols, red light therapy, like all the things. And he's literally sitting here right now doing fine. They do think they might need to amputate his ear because of the way the canal was damaged. We're still trying to see if we can remedy and heal that. But It was just this insane thing. And I think if there's a lesson in that, it's just the power of advocating for yourself and making sure that you're informed and like always trying to take the best control of your health or like the health of anyone in your vicinity, pets, animals, or whatever.
Yeah.
Because my dog would literally not be here if I hadn't turned into a psychopath about it.
And, the vets know about as much as doctors do. So it's just, unless you're getting surgery performed, like I found I was able to treat my animals with my own research and the holistic products that I found. I just took things into my own hands and I was able to treat everything like holistically. Yeah.
Right. And by the way, like that's exactly my medical journey and my, medical trauma of I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars going to every specialist and getting every single test, deathly sick, like not even hardly able to stand upright, and was told I was fine, was told I needed a hobby, was asked if my boyfriend was stressing me out when I literally had a neurological inflammatory disease that was attacking my entire nervous system and every cell and organ of my body. And that was evidenced by my heart rate and all these things. But they were like, nope, we think you're fine. We just think you're bored and you need a hobby. And so I've been in that space personally. I deal with a lot of people, even when I was more on the functional health side. People had been to 30 doctors, and within an hour, I could be like, this is a functional gut thing. Like, this is SIBO, this is whatever. And it just astonishes me how much negligence there is. Even the fact that 7 different doctors over 7 days told me that couldn't be because of an ear infection. I'm like, you can Google and in 2 seconds see that this is what can happen with a deep inner ear infection. It's all neurological. Like, how are you not taking me seriously? So it's one thing for there to be negligence or something to be missed or whatever, but when there's this systemic dismissal and lack of appropriate care, like we have to really be fierce, educated, empowered advocates for ourselves and other people. Like we
It
just
seems like it's getting worse.
it
Yeah.
100% is.
I think we put too much power into the professionals' hands, and it's not everybody's qualified, just
Yeah.
because they have the degree. It's just like you said, you spoke to the influencers. A lot of that smoke and mirrors, like, yeah, they went to school, they got the degree, but do they have the actual knowledge,
Yeah.
experience, or know-how?
Right.
No. The answer is no. Not all of them do.
Right. Memorizing stuff is really all it takes to get through med school. You
Right.
memorize stuff, you check boxes, and there's a certain degree of continuing education, but the science is so evolved and it's so vast. Like even in my field, the amount of money and time that I spend on things way outside of my continuing education, that's like the bare minimum, is extensive. And it takes that to stay on top of the latest and the greatest. And people get compliant, they're exhausted, they're burnt out, they're getting paid regardless. There's no incentive for that. It's
Exactly.
not a performance-based thing in medicine where they're like, we only get paid if your animal actually makes it. So,
right.
And I try to have a lot of compassion for especially those vets, because even being in the waiting room, some of the stuff that I witnessed of people having, again, hysterical breakdowns, like a dog had been hit and all of this, I'm like, I can't imagine the amount of grief and pain and suffering they have to deal with.
Sure.
But you still have to take care of. There's some animals you can't save, but my animal had a completely different problem, and you just get to worst case scenario. And like there should be a standard of accountability there. There was even a point where I was like, I'm taking this to the news and I'm going to tell the whole world. But I'm like, I just
you let it go. Right.
Yeah, I feel like this is the way to educate and help make a change there, to take that pain and that grief and just empower people to, if you have the resources, get other opinions, do your own research. If you're willing to do it, it really does pay off. And my little guy over here is proof of that.
That's amazing. And common sense and intuition are stronger than you think. Common sense is very powerful. And what is it? 80% common sense in the medical field, then 20% text. Textbook.
And it's that problem solving equation. And I think that's like one of my best skill sets throughout all the different fields that I've been in, is I'm not like a repeat person. Like even the method that I created, the Satori method, it combines like 6 different fields of science and training that are normally their own thing. But I would always look at things like, well, wait a minute, this actually fits this, and this impacts this and this. And so I just kind of had this like tapestry of putting all this together in this really systemic way, because I could, again, see the flaws with, if you're just looking at psychology, you're missing the boat. But if you're just looking at the nervous system, you're missing the boat. Just looking at nutrition, you're missing the boat. And I don't think that everybody is like that, but I think that those are the types of people that really create kind of like systemic change, is when you bring different concepts and things together and you're disruptive. But it ruffles a lot of feathers, and it's not always fun to be that person.
No, right, exactly. But you create change. That's how you create change and bring awareness and educate people.
Exactly. It's like we have to be willing to look at what's not working about the medical industry, the coaching industry, like all of these different spaces. If it's not working, then we have to look at things differently. And
again, back to solutions.
Yes, exactly. The common theme is how do we move forward with it? And I've had so many people reach out because I started creating these like crazy little frozen treats with Neo that had all these different ingredients and stuff. And I know a lot about like micronutrients. Like orthomolecular medicine is my jam. But I learned so much more in that 7-day intensive studying things I had never even heard of that can help with inflammation, that's anti-cancer. And I literally created these little treats like in coconut oil in these little molds. And I was did I just create another company? Because
oh my God, you sound like me. I say that shit all the time. Like it's another thing. Yes.
Yeah. I was like, it's a really extensive process to like blend it all and to mold it and all the things. But I'm like, this is literally the magic that's in this little concoction that I just created would like help so many dogs. And I did. I have to full stop. I want to create everything into a business, but singularity of focus. I try to stay in my lanes.
That's addicting too. I know. And I love that we touched on grief, not only for pet.
I think the collective thing that we're told about grief is that just time fixes it. But that's not necessarily the case. Like for one, it's going to always be there to a certain degree. And I found out the hard way, to more of a degree than I ever thought. But then also even though my journey was so hard, like I facilitate a lot of people through grief and I see all the different ways we respond, but there's still some really incredible tools that do help. You know, there's ways to regulate your body and to help release memories if trauma was a part of it, you know, PTSD, flashbacks, like every part of grief has these other potential elements in with it. And there's certainly things that can help with those because you don't need all of that additional pain and trauma on top of the grief. The grief is hard enough alone. And that's where it gets really troubling that people go through. Like we just had Hurricane Helene and half the mountains are gone. I mean, hundreds of lives in cities and towns, homes destroyed. And we're rebuilding, but there's no on-site trauma therapist to help people with this kind of stuff. You know, it's like these are the wounds we carry. So I think there's just a lot of conversations that need to happen around like how important it is to get those right tools to even stand a chance to be able to recover on the other side.
Well, and sharing experiences, just hearing someone else's experience can provide the tools for one person to maybe find that relatable and apply it to themselves.
Exactly.
Yeah. The power of sharing experience is huge. What current projects are you working on out there in Colorado?
So I'm doing my first event actually here in November. And that's a big thing that I want to start cultivating is like these experiential, like healing retreats, whether it's a day, a weekend, or bigger. When I closed my gym and wellness center, that was actually what I had planned to do. I launched a company called Zen Finders, and it was about like healing retreats. So that's going to be something for like 2025 that's big. Relaunching both of my podcast shows is another big focus. And I have this crazy lofty dream that I want to finish my book by the time I'm 40, which I have 1 year and a couple months left. So those are kind of some of the big things. And then the last thing that I launched this year, but I'm still building out is it's a project, like a charity project, self-funded, that's called Save the Heroes. And it's a free platform for first responders, veterans, and people actually in news media to get like trauma healing resources for free.
Amazing.
So I'm kind of building that out, and it's just going to be a word of mouth, getting people the right tools so they really understand what's happening in their brains, their nervous systems relevant to PTSD, trauma, depression. That's been something I wanted to do for a long time, and just continuing to build a community. And like my tagline in my practice is, well, it's two. It's teaching people the language of their brain and their body, because we're never taught that language, and it's the most important language we ever learn. And then like changing the world one nervous system at a time, like really helping people understand that every single part of their life is impacted and dependent on the function of their nervous system. And it's so neglected, and it's so in such a tragic state with the amount of stress that we're under. And again, unresolved trauma that we go through, that I just hope to have those deeper conversations and reach people and empower them with the right tools that they can like heal and move forward through that. So those are all of my missions collectively in the upcoming projects.
I love it. I guarantee you're going to do the book. I can feel it. I can feel that book coming out. Also, too, what is your podcast? What was the name of your podcast?
Yeah. So Brain Body Speak is, well, it's funny because I actually had this kind of brand name called Spiritual Fit Chick for a long time. And that did not really reflect who I was as a practitioner or even the word spiritual. So I changed everything in 2022 to Brain Body Speak. So my prior show was called Spiritual Fit Chick. It was like health and wellness for the mind, body, soul. Brain Body Speak is the brand that it's relaunching. And then the Regulated CEO is a show specifically for CEOs. So it's all of the topics of trauma and stress and somatics, energy, psychology, all of that, but really tailored to CEOs and like that kind of avatar like myself. So it's two different legs that are going to be relaunched.
So 2 separate podcasts. Mm-hmm. That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah. You're going to have your hands full.
Yeah. Brain Body Speak is like more of a generalized wellness. It's kind of like the broad topic of mental health, physical health, success, mindset, like
but that's good because there can't be enough information about that, I don't think. Exactly. And, you know, especially if you're dealing with someone that you can put trust in and find value in, like I find in you, that's good. Like you can't have enough of that, I don't think.
Yeah. And one of the core dynamics that will be a part of that show that I'm excited about is because of my journey and all the things I've been through, and then also kind of my like clinical training. Everything is this extreme. Everything's so polarizing and it's so like niche specific, but like I always kind of do this number. I'm like, I like to weave both elements of various sides and help people see like different components. And so one of my goals with that show is to really like have conversations that aren't just tell me all of your ideas in one dimension and me only have a certain type of guest. Like I want to have people that I disagree with. I want to have people that I have hard conversations with, and just bring these different elements of like deeper conversation. That's kind of, I think, what's missing in a lot of spaces where it's confirmation bias. You have people that agree and then you agree and agree. And it's like, okay, cool. But what new concepts? Like, how can we talk and expand this concept instead of black or white, no matter which camp you're in? How can we actually see the neutrality in it? And I think that's one of my skill sets that is going to be fun to bring to the show. Just introduce people to new things that they normally may have like dismissed.
I like that. And I like having healthy conversation where I don't like to surround myself with people that see everything from the same through the same lens I do.
Yeah.
But I like, I don't want to have a toxic conversation with people either.
Right.
So it's finding those people to connect with. It's very tricky.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's exactly why I kind of feel like that's part of what my calling with the podcast is to be able to open up and have that conversation where they can speak their mind and I could share mine, but it's in a respectful, diplomatic way, because like you said, people only know one thing, and this is a product of collective trauma and dysregulation. If you disagree with me, you're the enemy, like, period. Like,
right.
Full charge. Like, I've got to destroy you. I've got all the things. And of course, we're in an election year, so that's more polarizing and charged than ever. And I just think, I'm like, if people can learn a few skills for their brain, a few skills for their body, and then how to actually not be so reactive and in their box where everything is threatening, like, we will go a long way as society. So
I like a diverse group of mindsets around me. That's what I also like about Legacy Tribe, is that we're not all just a carbon copy of each other. It's not that way. Everyone has their own unique beliefs, opinions, but everyone's really respectful and can exist in the same space.
Exactly. I think that's what we need more of, is just that collective respect. And interesting. Like, if people could literally step back and learn to say, interesting, instead of that's wrong. Can you imagine the conversations and the understanding and the healing that could happen? So,
well, and just taking the time to process what they just heard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not always about being on the defense. Like, just chew on that for 24 hours and you may, find yourself interested, in learning more. And so that's always good. I think I like learning new things. When can we expect the podcast to relaunch?
So Brain Body Speak is going to launch next month. So it's my 15th year as an entrepreneur, and then my 6th year was done in a bottle. So I'm actually launching that on the retreat that I'm hosting on that day. So it's like this triple whammy of a celebration, an anniversary, a relaunch, and all the things. So that's my projected date. And then the Regulated CEO is going to happen in January.
Beautiful. Well, that's the trifecta right there. Yeah. That's what they call the hat trick.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. It's exciting. Especially after being so behind the scenes for so many years. Like, visibility was my big word this year. Like, I'm big on like words and intentionality. And like, even when I created my little vision board for my phone, it was like, be seen, be heard. And that's a whole other topic on a whole other podcast. But like, being that isolated and that sick and going through a lot of collective trauma that I went through, your confidence takes a big beating, and my nervous system and so many things were like so beat up. And so there's been a lot of progress this year of just like stepping back out and like kind of finding my footing and my voice again. And it feels really good. I really feel excited about where these things are going. So yeah,
I'm excited for you. You sound amazing. You look amazing. I think you have a beautiful future ahead of you. Yeah, it's going to be very exciting.
Thanks for the affirmation about the book. Like, that's the one thing I would really love to do before I hit 40. It's been a long time coming. I have a couple that I've been working on, but there's one specifically that's my goal. So if I can scale everything to where I want and then really shift focuses, like, that's what I'm setting my intention on. So,
well, I can't wait to buy a hot stack of your book, because I love gifting books to people. So anytime I know someone that authors something, I just buy a big stack, and I love to pass them along. Yeah, of course. That's so
Getting me
exciting.
excited in my mind's eye seeing that happen. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Now, where can people follow you?
So Brain Body Speak on Instagram, brainbodyspeak.com is my website. Regulated CEO is also on Instagram. It's a brand new page, but if you're interested in that realm, that's where to plug in. But yeah, Brain Body Speak across all platforms is the best place to find me, and send me a message. I'm very active and personable on social media. Like, it's not an afterthought for me. It's not just an advertising platform. Like, I actually like to have conversations and get to know people. So if anybody sends me a message and says they listened to this, like, I love to hear what resonated and actually say hello. So I welcome that.
Yeah, and you have a great following too, which that's fantastic. You have good good interaction on there.
Yeah,
A lot of
it's
good
fun.
things happen. Or anything that's going on that you want to bring awareness to?
Yeah, just from my community, just all of the hurricane relief efforts.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people actually, like, the media did not really cover at all what happened in North Carolina and in the mountains and stuff. And there's still just a lot of people really suffering. And I always think it's important for us to have different legs of our companies and our existence that is always like giving back. So I just always encourage people to like look at what's happening in the world and, look where people need help and to plug into those resources. So that's just something that comes to mind is, again,
I
the media.
appreciate that.
Yeah, the
Yes.
media doesn't always cover that kind of stuff. And sometimes you kind of, again, have to be a little proactive with it. And then Save the Heroes is the platform of, the website is live now. We don't have the program built on the back end, but people can opt in, and just people keeping in mind that there's a resource that's coming for veterans that's free, that's accessible, that like literally could be the thing that is a defining factor for somebody. Like, my goal is to just increase awareness around that.
I love that. Very commendable. You're doing some great things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Doing my best.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today via StreamYard. Next time it will definitely be in person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're welcome here anytime.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, guys, for more on Holly, follow all of her links, click like and subscribe. That's a wrap.